And this is often called the Worrier gene.
Yes.
Which I remember you and I, we had a conversation many years ago about this maybe being like an entrepreneurial gene, because I think I think being an entrepreneur, and this is for the clinicians who don't identify, let me just break the news to you right now. You are an entrepreneur if you are in practice for yourself. Maybe, if you're a medical doctor, it's a little different, but if you are a naturopath, a chiropractor, physical therapist, osteopath, you are also an entrepreneur. Like, what crazy person, how crazy do you have to be to go against the grain, to not get a safe job working for someone else with benefits and say, you know what, I'm going to change the health of my community. I'm going to open up a practice. I'm going to be not only the boss, I'm going to be the technician who delivers. I'm going to be the HR. I'm going to be marketing. I'm going to be sales. I'm going to put all this together and it's all going to be great. So can we talk a little bit about how the comp gene is, and we can maybe start talking a little bit about brain health in here as well, because I think that this is also, when I learned about my own comp gene, I'm heterozygous for it. So I was like, oh, that's how I could, for long periods of time, sit down and study. Like I could sit down and focus on something. And I also have a proclivity for taking not big risks. Like I'm not like the super entrepreneur, like the serial entrepreneur that like starts 10 businesses. But I've started a few and they've all been relatively risky. So can we talk a little bit about how the comp gene interacts, let's say, with our metabolism of dopamine and some of the other catecholamines?
It's time for a rant. I'm going to go off on a rant now, because when it comes to the brain, that's my favorite part of what we do, because, kind of like what we talk about female hormone health, it's underserved, but it's also just not recognized. So at least the women know that they have a problem and they're asking for help. When it comes to this stuff, people have no clue what's right, what should be right, what's wrong, what should be wrong, all that stuff. So starting with comp, but the profile you described, I'll use that as our avatar.
Sure.
The graduate who's opening their own clinician, and what does it take for that person to succeed? And if they don't have it, what do they need to do? Right? Because it doesn't mean they can't achieve it. They understand what equipment they've been given. If you buy a Ferrari, great, you bought a Ferrari. If you take it off-roading, it's not so great anymore. It's going to fall apart. But if you take an SUV off-roading, it's going to do pretty well. They'll actually beat the Ferrari. So understanding what your innate capacity is, and we're not all the same, and then putting yourself in the right context. That's how you thrive. And if you're in the wrong context, you need to know so you can either change it or adapt and add the tools you need. So starting with comp, yes, it clears your dopamine pathway out, or the dopamine itself out, sorry. You start with first, when it comes to mood, we see things in three phases. The anticipation. I smell the tasty pizza. I know it's coming. The feeling. I bit into the tasty pizza. Oh, wow. The clearance. Go back to normal of going to work or whatever I was doing before. Right? That's how you experience most things. If I use comp, so first DRD2, the dopamine pathway determines to what degree do you actually bind dopamine. So when that thing starts, are you binding it efficiently? Are you actually anticipated and excited? Or are you stone cold and you don't feel? When it actually happens, did you feel it at the level of the peers around you? Like, this is amazing. Like, yeah, it's okay. Right? Because you just can't feel. And then while they're still enjoying the meal, are you now on your phone distracted by something else because your comp is so fast you can't stay in the moment long enough? So if that's you, you're a warrior. You three outcomes: depression, because you don't feel; addiction, because dopamine powers pleasure, and you go down this route of something that finally gives you that hit. That's such a wow factor that you do it and you do it and you do it and you structure your day around it. You do it more and more and more until you kill yourself. Or achievement, because dopamine also powers reward, and you only need to do one of the two to feel satisfied. And so you go down this reward route and you take risks and risks and risks and risks. And then the reward from the risk feels so good that the failures don't really matter. So that's the avatar of the person who is reward seeking. If they were in the context of needing reward, that same clinician that was about to open the practice, that was willing to put their money on the line and go start a brand and do all the stuff, taking a risk, could have also gone down the depression route because they didn't have that option in front of them, don't feel satisfied with what's going on, and just fall apart Why do you see so many high level people, Anthony Bourdain committing suicide, Olympic athletes killing themselves, high optimal achievement people? Because the second they're not getting the hit, depression. They're not wired for pleasure, right?
And
so
it takes so much to activate those dopamine receptors as well.
Yes,
like they need so much. Yeah.
And that's why they achieve so much, because they have to. They have to take risks. They have to go way beyond what everyone else does to get the same level of hit, to maintain some level of satisfaction. So now, on top of that, you talked about, but these people also wear multiple hats. They're the marketing person, they're the podcaster, they're also the clinician, they're also receiving the legal letters in the mail, right? So there's a certain profile that can do that. You talked about BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Yeah. That's that gene that determines how well you deal with neuroplasticity, your brain developing neural connections that, the synapses, that information flows through these highways of your brain. And this one gene will determine how efficiently you develop these connections. So for some people that are highly efficient, and you'll often see this in the warrior high performance category, they do a really good job with that. So not only can they develop a lot of skills, but at a masterful level. They're never, call it a PhD of any of them. They're not the true thought leader in them, but they can do 85% of everything, which makes them this multi-hat wearing entrepreneur, right? It's very easy for them to shift gears, learn new skills, and they have the fast comp, which allows them to multi-prioritize and not get stuck in a particular reward or experience. They can move on to the next one, right? The opposite, if you have the low BDNF, you're more a specialist, tunnel vision. This is what I do. Don't move me from my desk, right? I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to write about it. This is what I do. But they are a true thought leader. They do it better than anybody. They needed an assistant for every single step of the way. They can't do it. Literally, the thing they do is all they do. You get an email from them, it's probably 3 pages, and it could have taken 2 lines, because they think so deep about everything they do. But that person can't wear the multiple hats. They can't be an entrepreneur. But they can't even burden the thought of, I have to think about legal, I have to think about marketing, forget it. Somebody else do all that. Think about the scientist in the lab. Right?
I was going to say the researcher or the academic. Yeah.
Yes, the academic, perfect example. I do this better than anybody, but don't ask me to even go to the other room to talk to people. This is what I do. You do it in this room, right? That's how tunnel vision it is. And then, there's variability in between. So these are the 2 extremes. So entrepreneurs are usually on this end, but you will find that random, unique person who's on the other far end that happened to build the team around them. Different reason for their success. They were the IP, but somebody else built everything around them, right? Now that's another serotonin. Serotonin is often spoken of for your mood. How do I feel? Your mood regulator. And there's supplements like 5-HTP that people take to modulate or regulate their serotonin uptake and how they feel. It does a lot more. So your mood. What it actually does and why it affects your mood, it determines how well your brain prioritizes stimulus. So when we're sitting here talking, there's been several times where there's been a kid walking by the window, and I've noticed it every time, right? I've learned to focus, but I have the shortest possible serotonin receptor, which means that every single detail and nuance stands out to me. Everything is irritable, everything is bothersome, everything is frustrating, and I read into things at a depth and level that people didn't even see. So when we're sitting here in the room, having a meeting, talk about 10 things, not only do I remember the 10 things, but I remember what page of your notebook you wrote the note on when next week you say we didn't talk about that, right? That being said, it's a little bit too much. I have to meet people.
So you need a quiet environment to study. Like I remember if someone was breathing the wrong way in university, like we would like in this communal kind of study area, I would have to get up and move. I was like, I can't, this person is so loud. I can hear the air going up their nostrils. Like I can't, like I needed total silence. And Giovanni, my partner, who you know as well, loves background noise. He always wants music on. He always wants like white noise puts him to sleep. I need dead, dark room, dead silence room. He likes like whoosh, like he likes like noises.
Now think about Giovanni.
Yeah.
Zen, cool, things don't get to him. Why? The exact same stimulus that you and I are experiencing, his perception truly believes it's about 40% of what we think it is.
Right.
He doesn't even hear the thing that's bothering us.
Right.
When people talk to you, they literally, when people walk into the room to tell you something, they have to think twice about how they're going to say it. Right? Because they know they can very easily frustrate you, bother you, derail you, distract you. With Giovanni, it's just like throw it on the table and he'll deal with it.
I feel seen. I feel seen.
And that's what it is. It's literally a reptilian part of our brain. So picture the snake that's sitting there. There's no maybe for a snake. It's either no or attack. You put your finger towards it, just all of a sudden bite. Right? There's nothing in between. And that's what serotonin does for us. It's this response to stimulus. What should I prioritize and react to? And if your receptor is shortened, then all of a sudden your brain doesn't know what to prioritize. And every clock ticking, every hunger pang, every noise, every whatever, everyone chewing their food the wrong way, which I'm sure you don't like, it all is a problem. But when you're doing your work, and this is why it's so valuable to an entrepreneur, is every little detail matters. Every T, every I, you read an email, you know exactly everything that they said, and you don't forget dates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All this stuff that if you're going to go build something, the new practice, you need to have this. Now, if you know that you don't, you need to have the right people around you.
Or maybe you don't build a practice. Maybe you're an associate. Maybe you work for somebody who has that so that you're well matched. Like one of the things I remember when I was still in physical practice was one of the early mistakes that I did was I just hired people that were like myself. And what ended up happening was they ended up like getting enough experience then leaving, right? Because they wanted to start their own thing, which is great. I was always happy for them, but it's not so great for my business, right? It's like, okay, I got to replace this person now. So I think that that's also a really important consideration. You know, we're talking about this in the clinician, in sort of like the lens of a clinician, but this can be anyone. Like if you are someone who really works well under pressure, is self-motivated, who can weather the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, because it's sometimes it's a psychotic roller coaster. Like sometimes it's the highest of highs. You're like, I made the best decision of my life. And other times it's the lowest of lows. Like, what am I doing? I can't do anything right. Why do I always keep making this mistake? Why do I hire this person? Why am I getting these legal letters? You know, all the things. So I think that knowing, you know, your genetic profile as a proxy for it's almost like it's like the most sophisticated personality test you could, there's all these like personality tests online, like, are you more like a cat or an owl? It's like, why don't you just do your genetics and you will have the most accurate let's say insight into who you are or your tendencies, and then you can know where you're strong and where you're weak, and that can direct some of the life choices that you make.
And it's not like a propensity or a guess, like, I think you're this personality. It's empirical. Here's the neurochemical that drives this behavior. Here's how much of it you bind, clear, to what degree. If I have your DNA, and I've done this many times, by the way, I don't ever need to talk to you to know your personality to a T. And we do this work for like Fortune 500 type company. We do it for professional teams like NBA, NHL teams, where we'll actually map who should actually be the captain. We've done this work for the US military, like Navy SEALs and Black Ops, Special Forces. Who's going to come back with PTSD? Who's going to come back with shell shock? Who can pull the trigger with zero hesitation, right? Who should actually drop the front lines and go be the engineer in the background? We've done a lot of this type of work because DNA doesn't lie. It is what it is. And going back to the PTSD thing, that's actually another element for that entrepreneur, which is the ADRA2B gene determines your noradrenaline relationship. And that's where you can have, remember I mentioned the insertion or deletion where there's a paragraph missing? Yeah. That's one of the rare genes where that's possible. And some people do have deletions here, which means when it comes to negative stimulus, they're much more likely to imprint it. And by imprint it, I mean that the feeling that they experience during that problem, they're going to use as a primary filter or driver the next time something similar happens. So God forbid there's a car accident. You know, there's some people that will jump in an Uber and go home. There's some people that can't look at a car for 3 months. There's some people that can never go down that street ever again in their life. Because they remember, we all experience the feeling. A car accident sucks for anybody. But do you remember the feeling? There's experience, and then there's the virtual imprint, PTSD, trauma.